Welcome back to Tailored Talks. I'm Brad.
And I'm Will.
So it's been a minute.
It has. Too long.
We took a bit of a hiatus, but we are back. We're excited to be here. It is now March.
Indeed. And it's a big month. We're about to celebrate our 12th anniversary.
12 years at OMJ. So we're really excited about that. And for today's episode, as we were kind of talking, we thought it would be great to share, especially on the heels of turning 12, are things that inspire us. So think, we do clothing here, but things that inspire us outside of that as well. So we'll talk a little bit about OMJ, probably some stories over the years, and then things like music and bourbon and vintage and watches and all things like that. We're going to talk about that today as well. Just things that we love. And I look forward to sharing that with you guys.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to speak to sort of the vision for OMJ when it all started.
Right. I've been thinking a lot about that. As you know, I've been writing a lot more. Writing is something I do love doing. And for the longest time, I just really didn't have time to do it. So my big New Year's resolution was to write quite a bit more. And it's really been sort of cathartic to really think about. It's forced me to think about the past, but also looking forward. And I was sort of taken back. I was reading some past blog posts. I read the very first blog post that we wrote when we were launching OMJ. That was funny, only slightly cringeworthy, but it took me back. I mean, it was really a very simplistic vision. It was oldmasonjar.com, and it was t-shirts, ties, and polos. And button downs.
It really spoke to the sort of the Southern menswear sort of ethos.
We wanted an elevated casual brand. That was really what we were going for. And this was also the time of, I think, 2013, Southern Tide and Southern Marsh and a lot of Southern brands that do not exist anymore. And I can even remember those were all hats, polos, and koozies and t-shirts. So I was like, we're going to do button downs. So we'll be different.
Well, and I even remember with our koozies, they were leather.
They were leather. Yes. They were leather. So a little more elevated. Indeed. So we kind of had that elevated ethos, but online then was very, very much in vogue, I would say. That's where brands were created and thrived. And then you would get into wholesale. You would sell into other retail stores. And, we thought we were going to go that route. But, the rise of Amazon was coming. I mean, just
Instagram even.
Instagram. Yeah, Instagram literally, I think, started the year before we launched
Incredible.
launched OMJ, which is wild to think about. But it was something that, thankfully, we kind of left room to grow. We never had a vision of this is exactly what we're going to do. The vision always was based on we wanted an elevated casual brand that inspires, that's accessible. And so that was really more of our ethos, giving back. And it wasn't, we're going to do online and then we're going to go into 150 stores. That was sort of the model, I think, for other brands, but we kind of left it open, and I'm glad we did because, a couple years in, we really kind of quickly pivoted into even more of an elevated experience and offering custom suiting and wild stories there, from our earlier episodes, of course. But that was a pivot that if we hadn't made the pivot, we wouldn't be a brand today, or maybe it would be out there, but it would be a totally different brand. But I'm so glad we did because we really got into building suiting and creating experiences and experiential retail. And, with experiential retail, I remember early on thinking that's the future. That's where things are going. Things are, you can go online to Amazon and get pretty much anything you want. But elevated things people want to go touch and they
Sure.
want to go feel. And so I sort of felt, there's two camps. There's Amazon over here. And then for all of the retail, you got to have an experience-based theme, or that has to be important to create that experience for the customer, for them to come in and pick out what they want. And that's what's going to drive success. So that's the model we went to.
Certainly. And, and especially with the tactile nature of, different types of fabrics and, learning about weight of fabrics and learning about where a lot of these fabrics are woven and how we source the fabrics. And it is an experience that unless you're in it and you're immersing yourself physically, you're not going to fully appreciate it.
Right.
And I think that's something that we do so well.
Right. And then I would also add, a lot of guys don't like to shop.
Sure.
So creating a place where guys who don't like to shop
put a bourbon in their hands
can come in. Exactly. Can come in and have a good time. So yeah, that led us here to today. And, 1,600 square foot retail store. Everything we do is inspired to drive a customer in to have an experience.
Sure. Totally. And a bit of a gateway drug, which I've mentioned in the past. But once you start with a custom garment, it just leads to more and more.
Sure, we don't tell people. No, we do. Yeah. Yeah. That's our secret.
So as far as some of the lessons learned throughout the process, throughout the last 12 years, where do you sort of see some of the, the pillars as far as those lessons along the way? What are some of the, the biggest lessons learned?
I think, my first lesson learned was it is not the field of dreams.
Build it and they will come.
It is not if you build it, they will come. Unlike in the movies, it takes a lot more than that. And
we are surrounded by cornfields.
Yes. I don't think I was prepared for that early on. It was, we're going to build this and everybody's going to come and support it. And I was taken aback. It was crickets a lot, and it took me a long time to realize. And now I totally get it. It's people have their own life. Like they don't care what we're doing with little OMJ over here. They don't care. I mean, not that they don't care, but they have more important things, we'll say. And so you have to give people a reason to come and support you and shop with you. And it can't just be creating something. You have to continually give them a reason to come and show up. And so with us, we've got to continually stay top of mind. We've got to continually innovate and get better. And
constant engagement.
Constant engagement.
And one thing that I've really gleaned from this experience and, seeing you fulfill a lot of your own dreams, if you will, is sort of taking that plunge from your professional life that was banking prior to making, this your life's work, making ultimately your passion, your life's work. Can you speak to that a bit?
I think, and I tell people a lot that they ask me that, how'd you do it? Because you're never gonna replace, what will happen is people have the side thing, as we had the side thing. You will want to replace your income before you stop doing the real job. And I tell people, you're never going to make what you make unless you stop doing the real job to your side job. So you're never going to replace it and then go. You have to make the leap. You've got to make the jump somewhat blindly and have confidence. Yes. But until you make the jump, and you just have to jump, and then it can happen, and it may not be overnight and it may take a while, but until you fully invest in it, like you can get it a certain way amount of you can get it to a certain point, and then you're not going to scale it beyond that unless you're devoting a lot of time and attention to it.
And I know you've spoken to this before, but you're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell's and this 10,000 hour approach. Can you speak to that again as far as when you hit that 10,000th hour?
Yes. Yeah. My some people are probably tired of me talking about Brad's crazy 10,000 hour rule, but it is so true. I mean, if you want to be great at something, you do it for 10,000 hours. And if you work a 40-hour work week for a year, no vacation, you're at over 2,000 hours. So if you think about it, if you want to be an expert at it, do it for 5 years consistently, or you can work like a crazy person and get there sooner. But you've got to put in the time. There's no shortcut. There's
One
no shortcut.
and to that point, one thing I recall, especially during COVID, just looking at your resolve ultimately, can you sort of speak to the COVID months?
The COVID months, that will be a trauma podcast for another day, I'm sure. It's in the future. We've definitely got to get into it. But
Lingering PTSD.
no, I think that's a great call out, because so many brands did falter during COVID. I think, we were sort of stubbornly sticking with it. Sales were way down. Nobody needed to dress up. And I will call out, there were a lot of folks who did support us during that time that didn't need to, like yourself. I remember you came in, you got your the dark green, double-breasted suit. You did not need that in any way, shape, or form, but you were just supporting us because you loved us and you knew that we needed the support. And there were so many customers that did that, and I'm so incredibly grateful.
And the face mask.
And we started making face masks. We started doing a lot of virtual. We did start putting a lot of stuff online, and it didn't, it wasn't going to replace what we were losing, but it kept us afloat long enough to where things started coming back.
Sure. And once they did, they came back in a big way.
And then it was almost like it was natural selection in a way, and from a COVID perspective, because if you made it a year and a half from March 20th, again, March 20th, I believe, is when everything shut down. We were set to open that week, our grand opening. So it was almost like either a cruel joke or a test. But anybody that made it, I would say, till the summer of 2021, and you were in some sort of consumer goods or retail, it was gangbusters after that. And so, now we're trying to keep up with limited staff, limited resources. We can't get stuff here, but the floodgates opened. So, anybody that survived it reaped the rewards, and that was nice.
Sure. And we never sort of leaned into this athleisure space as well. We sort of,
I stayed away. There were so
doubled
many.
down on suiting and sport coats and
dressing your best, because, one thing that I heard and have heard post-COVID is a more casual work environment. And so many guys would come in and, well, I don't have to dress up anymore. I just don't wear a suit anymore. I don't need to dress up, and that's fine. But if you want to stand out, what better way to do that now? The playing field, the bar is now so low that wearing a nice sport coat at work will vastly differentiate you from everybody else, just happy to be wearing their Lululemon and their polos and not have to dress up. But if I looked at it as, now you have an opportunity. It doesn't take nearly as much to elevate what you're wearing. And now it makes so much more of a difference. And so I tell guys that, and we've experienced a lot. The guys coming to see us, they take their career seriously. Not that people dressing casually don't, but they're serious, and they see that now is easier than ever to stand out by what you're wearing. And then when you're dressing better, you have a different confidence to you. Your work improves. Everything improves. It's just such a slight change that can make a huge and dramatic impact.
Certainly. Well, do you have any sort of mentors or, say, clients, employees, that you would maybe like to highlight as far as, throughout the journey?
Yeah, I think, there's too many people to thank. So I would say, family and the friends who supported us were everything. And, we like to say here, like, we don't hold grudges here, but we do remember and take care of everybody that supported us and has supported us over the years. So we're just so thankful to still be here 12 years from now.
Totally.
So, and as we go, as we go in future episodes, our plan, we've done a lot of planning for, we'll call it season 2 of the OMJ
There we go.
podcast. But we've got a lot of topics and things planned that we're going to hit on. So, we've gotten a chance to talk with a lot of our few listeners, and then even folks that watch our clips and things that we pull out. And, we'll dive in probably deeper into many of these topics. But, for us, as we're looking at it, 12 years reflecting, what are other things that inspire us? And our playlist kind of popped up. So
The infamous playlist.
the infamous OMJ showroom playlist. But music is such an inspiration, I think. I know for both of us. For those that don't know, Will is actually a paid musician.
Well,
Does,
what can I say?
He has a gig coming up
tomorrow,
and has played for many OMJ things, but has played for many events. So I will ask you, I think music has always, for me, has fueled creativity. Give me some ways like music has influenced you.
Totally. So, from an early age, I would listen to a lot of music, say from the late 60s. And it would sort of inform my style as well, especially learning about, Woodstock 69 and bell-bottom jeans. Not that I ever wore them, but, I always more or less, just revered, I suppose, a lot of those icons from that area. And, say if it was Janis Joplin or, Jimi Hendrix, perhaps even. And then you move on into the 70s and it's the disco era, and then the 80s with a lot of the fluorescent colors and so forth. And then into the 90s and the grunge era, and then into the 2000s. And so it's certainly informed my own personal style. My own personal style being more of a classic style, sure. and something that probably harkens back more to the 30s, 40s, 50s era into the Mad Men era of the 60s. But in saying all of that, music has been a constant in the sense that, it's always sort of fueled me, whether it's working here or, drawing inspiration even. And something that I've enjoyed so much here is that we constantly have it playing.
Yes.
And you can sort of speak, I'm sure, to the fact that the playlist really hasn't changed.
I love, sometimes I'll come in and instantly know somebody's changed to a new playlist.
Well, every now and then that does happen, sure.
When, the cat's away, if you will. I get it. I laugh, and I, of course, don't mind. But it's interesting, I'm very, this OMJ playlist, right? It's 10 plus years old. It's something that we never subtract from it. We only add, there's 194 songs on this playlist. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's not representative of everything that we listen to. We're both a big fan of John Mayer, and John Mayer's not on the playlist.
Sure.
And if it is, it's something that wouldn't even be one of his like big hits, because the playlist is a vibe, and it's a vibe for the store. It's funny. I put our playlist into ChatGPT because I was like, how would you describe it? I just can't really figure this out. So from ChatGPT, mind you, on the playlist, it's a lot of M83, Phanogram, The Japanese House, Andrew Bell, Bon Iver. I mean, it's a host of artists that some well-known, many that are not well-known, even ones I don't know. I just love the song, and it's really more of a feeling. But from ChatGPT, our playlist is a dreamy, modern, and stylish soundscape that blends nostalgia with innovation, giving customers the perfect backdrop to explore, express, and enjoy the art of personal style. So kudos to you, ChatGPT. I could not have said it better, literally, myself. So, it's things, it's songs you can play. It's not going to distract you, but it's additive. It puts you in a creative and inspired mood, even if it's subliminally. And for instance, on your point of it not changing, I mean, so 194 tracks. The Japanese House is track number 8 with Face Like Thunder, which is a great song.
Excellent.
Excellent song. And then track 189 is the Japanese house, Cool Blue. And so all between that is many different artists and forms of music that all speak in different ways, but it's a vibe. And, I think that is something that I, of course, probably love personally more than it really matters. But for me, it's another part of the little details that make up the experience.
Sure. And it's nice how we as employees and as an owner identify with certain songs as well. It's almost like we have our own at-bat song.
All that's a great way to put it. Often I'll be like, man, is this whole playlist not even playing? Because that one song will pop out, and I'll notice it. And the whole playlist is playing, but it's just these certain songs that will speak to you. Do you have a song?
Probably Face Like Thunder.
Face Like Thunder.
Honestly, the Japanese
it comes
house.
on, inherently it's always on when you're in a headspace to hear it.
Sure.
You're not working on other things. So,
and I have mentioned this in a previous podcast episode, but I get the question from clients constantly, can I pull this off? So perhaps there's something subliminally that's going on, from a soundscape perspective. When there's a client here, picking out a fabric and so forth. And, it gives them that added confidence to maybe make a leap decision-wise.
I think it really does. I mean, it gets you in a positive mood. It inspires you to take a little bit of a chance. So, speaking on musicians and music and fashion, I'll pitch this to you. Any musicians like, obviously Frank Sinatra, that's a well-known musician who integrated his style. Any other musicians that you just really admire from the fashion style perspective or would love to get your hands on from a stylist perspective?
Well, I've got to give a nod to John Mayer again, who you've previously mentioned. He's just more or less, a consummate fashion icon in his own right.
He's an honorary OMJ employee, even if he doesn't know it himself.
He's always got cachet here.
Yes.
But I've often thought about Charlie Seam, who's a really well-regarded violinist who, really sort of speaks to our sort of sartorial bent as well. And I'd love to dress Shawn Mendes, actually.
Oh, that's a great one.
I think he'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a great one.
There's some modern artists, at least.
Yes. We will dress any artist, by the way, that needs our help. Although a lot of artists, I would say, they're not going for the OMJ style per se, but we would dress them all.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Harry Styles, if you're listening.
Yes, Harry Styles. We're ready. All right. Thinking of other things like that inspire us. I mean, I think one thing that we've really gotten into, well, you've been into this for a long time, but one thing I finally decided to go down the rabbit hole on is vintage watches or watches as a whole, and the art and the science and all the things that go with it. We love that here.
Totally. And it is, as far as menswear is concerned, it's one of the few accessories that we have. And I mean, that's not to say that, you could wear other accessories as well, but it is one of the few accessories I think that really sort of speaks to an outfit and how it can complement, say, a beautiful shirt or jacket. And something that I've enjoyed personally about learning about vintage watches, especially, is the scholarship involved. The scholarship, the camaraderie, the community.
It's a differentiator.
Totally. And it's it's a talking point.
Right.
It's sort of a window as well into one's own personal style that perhaps you don't always see sheerly from a garment.
You can tell a lot about a guy by the watch he's wearing.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the favorite vintage watches? Now, it could be something you have, something that you would love to have. Speak a little bit to that.
Well, it's hard not to mention Rolex and their vast history. They've been making timepieces since 1905. and just a really intriguing brand, a heritage brand. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Rolex, especially whether it's the Date Just model or the Day Date or, on into Submariner and Daytona, just some really classic timepieces. I personally today am wearing a 1967 Omega
Ah,
Seamaster Cosmic,
and
original bracelet as well. And so I have an affinity for Omega
that's a phenomenal
additionally.
watch, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Also, for many, and we'll release this as we get further down the road, but yeah, I think from OMJ, we started carrying vintage watches about 4 or 5 months ago. I will neither confirm or deny that we did that so that we could wear them as a business expense. But actually, it's been kind of crazy how many we've sold. And not even just we bring a watch in and people love it and buy it. What I think I realized is so many people, from anything vintage, I think long held vintage was sort of reserved for either like vintage cars, but those are incredibly expensive. And then you think like vintage clothes, which is kind of those are considered cheap, a vibe, but low cost. So vintage can kind of have this connotation of is either really expensive or it's on the other end of the spectrum. But I think what I've learned and what people are learning with vintage watches is these things are built to last for a very long time. So a vintage watch is not, some are very expensive, but there's a value proposition there. You can get a great vintage watch from the 1960s or 70s that has a connotation and a history to it, and it can really elevate you perhaps even further than a 2024 Rolex Datejust that's incredibly shiny and it looks great but has no story, versus a vintage watch from 1975 that has a plethora of story and there's a history to it. So,
And not as much of a barrier of entry.
and a lower barrier to entry to buy. You can get a phenomenal vintage watch for $1,000, which $1,000 is, of course, it's all relative, but that's a lot of money. But, people are spending tens and 15s and 20,000s of dollars on watches, new watches.
Sure.
So,
And demand is so high in many instances, it's hard to get your hands on a new
very hard to
watch
get
from a
your hands
heritage
on it.
brand.
Talk about, I think what we've also learned, the curation piece. It's people need help.
Definitely. In fact, over the last few weeks, I've had several people reach out saying, gosh, where did you get that watch? I would have never thought to have worn something like that. Like, how do you even begin?
Right.
And the wheels start turning.
They don't realize they're talking to two extreme rabbit hole guys.
Sure. So if you need a concierge service regarding the horological wants.
Yes. We've very much, so Will and I, in fact, are in the process of even taking this a step further and starting an actual vintage watch brand company where we're essentially curating pieces that we love and then helping others find pieces for their loved ones. And very excited about that. And we'll certainly share more on that when we get there.
Super psyched.
Bourbon.
Oh.
That might inspire some people in more ways than one.
Well, and in fact, we just had a big event last night here at the store.
For those that do not know, we have a whiskey club at OMJ, and it's something that we wanted to do since we opened the store 5+ years ago. It took us a while to start it. We've had it for coming up on 2 years now. And it's just a great way, to gather with like-minded people. That's inspirational in its own way. And then it's a way to provide more experience for our customers. So we had a whiskey club event here last night with our dear friend Trey Wade. He was on our whiskey and bourbon
Just a font of
podcast
knowledge.
savant. And then he also had a buddy, Anthony, who has probably the biggest bourbon whiskey spirits collection in Charlotte in his house. It's called the Bourbon Whiskey Library.
And two squires as well.
And two squires. And so we'll make sure we add the link to them in the podcast notes. But they're Tennessee Squires, which is they're brand ambassadors for Jack Daniels. It's not paid, but it is an incredibly honored position to get that Squire designation. Talked all things Jack Daniels. It was lovely. And then shared bottles from their personal collection that were, I would gather, if you could even find them, they would be thousands of dollars. They shared literally with 30 other people in the whiskey club. And they were just so good. I've never tasted bourbon like that. And I've tasted a lot of great bourbon.
Honestly insane.
And it was awesome. So the whiskey club, but I think in a bigger sense, like bourbon is so huge. I think for me as a collector, it kind of has some of those same notes of tying back to craftsmanship and something that you can collect and something that you can build a personal collection of. And it's also a great, like vintage watches, like there's certain things in life that go beyond, I can just buy it. And
Sure.
Bourbon is one of those. You could be the president of the United States, and if there's no bottle left and somebody has an attachment to it, that you can't just buy it from them. It's the great, I call it, a lot of things separate individuals in society, but it's something that brings everybody together.
Definitely.
It levels the playing field, because if you work hard enough for these limited release bottles, if you stand in line, if you work your connections, you can find a bottle that person B over here who has all the money in the world can't get. And there's something I love about that it kind of transcends status
or class
or monetary value. I just love that about it.
And I love sheerly just how, it more or less you're sort of in this place of like contemplativeness, if you wanted to call it that, to where you're almost forced to take a beat or pause, enjoy a sip, and reflect. And I get sort of the same reaction when I'm, say, winding my watch.
Mm-hmm.
So I love those properties.
I love that. Yeah.
Which is really nice.
Stop, take time, smell the proverbial roses.
There you go.
Or the proverbial 4 roses.
And there you go. Touche.
That's terrible.
And then you're building a collection perhaps in the process, whether it's a collection of taste, or a literal collection that you can pass on.
There's something you can build. And as Trey puts it, and I love this is his whole ethos. He has so many great bottles, but what he loves doing is sharing it. And for him, bourbon and whiskey is meant to be shared.
And with Trey, you could see it on his face last night.
He loved opening that bottle. I would have been, I don't know if I would do it. I would do it. A different version of Brad years past would not have opened a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle for everybody, but I would do that today. In fact,
we've done it.
Well, so every year when, the Whiskey Club is an annual membership, but every year we raffle off some really great bottles just by being in the Whiskey Club. So we gave a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle 15-year away last year. We gave a couple bottles of Weller away. We gave, some really nice bottles. And, I think from hanging out with Trey, it's inspired me to be a sharer in that regard too, right? The stuff is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be shared. And I love that. And I think it's perfect. It goes hand in hand with our business. Many a guy will come in and grab a glass of bourbon. I will say it's a differentiator for us at OMJ. So when somebody comes in for an appointment, they're able to grab grab a glass of bourbon. We also carry wine. We also carry coffee. Not everybody drinks bourbon. But the bourbons they have to choose from, you're not going to find anywhere else.
We've been spoiled.
But no custom clothier is sharing Weller 12 or Blanton's or Pappy Van Winkle.
Sure.
With people that come in. These are things these are drinks that if you can even find it at a bar, you're paying $100 a pour. And we're happy if you're coming in and you're spending time with us as part of your experience, you're getting that as part of the experience while you're picking out your suit. What better way to pick out a suit than over a bottle of Weller 12?
Definitely.
Or a great coffee if
it's a 10 o'clock appointment, sure. Perhaps.
No judge. No, it's a judge-free zone here. But I think that the bourbon the inspiration of bourbon ties directly into a lot of the things we do here. And it sort of goes hand in hand, and it's really ingrained into a lot of the stuff that we do. So looking ahead, it's interesting. For the longest time, I would look really far ahead. So if you would have asked me in 2016 when we were in our little shop in Uptown, you would have said 5 years or 10 years, I would have said, oh yes, we're going to be in multiple cities and, that sort of thing. And that has not happened, but we did renew our lease here starting this year. We're here for a little over 5 more years in this spot. We're here in
South End has been incredible to us.
Incredible. I can't even quantify what it's meant to the brand to have a storefront next to Patagonia, next to Jenny's Ice Cream. We've got some incredible local companies as well. Little Bell, she's literally 2 doors down. She started like 8 months after we started. She's doing great, and this whole area is just phenomenal for growth of Charlotte. We both grew up right outside Charlotte, and to see the growth has been incredible. Charlotte is a untapped market when it comes to clothing. I mean, the amount of business we do at OMJ in South End. We'll do over 600 weddings this year. We'll do over 1,000 suits this year, maybe even closer to 2,000 suits this year. And a lot of that's driven. A lot of it's repeat. A lot of it's our marketing efforts, but a lot of it's driven by people just walking by. And it's just a sub area of Charlotte. Not to mention a lot of our folks who buy are in South Park area or other areas, Valentine,
and some even out of state.
And, so I'm bullish on Charlotte. I think, sure, one day I'd love to have a shop in other cities, but I mean, as you grow, you lose the ability to be unique and authentic. And I've seen it. Every custom clothing company I've seen that's grown beyond a store or two, they lose the ability to be unique. Now they have staff who they're not overseeing, and so they have to dwindle their options down because a person that's been there 2 months can't make just anything. They have to keep it simple. You look at a big box brand like an Indochino or even like a Suit Supply, it has to be very simple what they can offer. And I love the ability to somebody that walks in and says, I want a suit that has one long sleeve and no sleeve on the other side and 3 different colors. And I love being able to be like, we can do that. And nobody else can. Right. Nobody else can make that for you. We can do that. And that's because we are small. So I think there's room to grow in Charlotte. There's plenty of room to grow in Charlotte.
Well, and that hands-on approach, you see so many other brands, whether big or small, as they try to scale, it's somewhat diluted.
It's so hard to keep a high-end experience when you're scaling.
Especially when we're actually building patterns. And I know you can elaborate on that as well as being a differentiator.
Yes. I mean, you lose all of the ability to have that experience with that customer, the faster you grow. And not to say you can't succeed. I mean, these brands have absolutely succeeded. It's just a different business model. And, I think as I've learned, like, I don't need OMJ to be this huge brand. I need 1,000 great customers. And I love coming to work and loving what I do every day and working with people and friends. Will and I grew up together, right? And we have a great staff here. And I love that. And it affords the ability to do what you love. And so, for me, for the next 5 years, we'll be here.
Absolutely. Rest assured.
Maybe we'll be a couple other places. But if you want the OMJ experience, unless we have worked on a lot of virtual things, but if you want the true OMJ experience, we will be in Charlotte.
You're here.
Yes. So wrapping up, I think we love all this stuff, right? And anybody that comes in, inevitably will, if you want to chat, we'll get in a conversation with it. And, that's the appeal, right? You can come in and you can chat with Will or I or the team, and we all love this stuff and we live for this stuff. So I would like to personally thank everybody again who supported us over the years. I have been told we need to tell people to subscribe to this OMJ podcast, and touching on that and the marketing aspect of it, somebody was asking, like, what, how many people do you think will listen to this? And I was laughing. I was like, no. Nobody's listening to this full thing, right? I mean, some people are. Thank you, Mom. Yeah.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Thank you, Mom and Dad. This isn't for, some people will listen, but we don't think thousands of people are listening to the podcast in full or watching it.
I don't know. Our wives, maybe multiple.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Hannah, probably. I can probably safely say she's not watching this. But it's the content and the clips that we're able to pull from this. So everything we talk about in our podcast, we're able to create and pull some of the tidbits from it and use those on our social and our marketing. And that's really, that's the big value of it, and reaching a large audience. We'll have thousands of people, our socials, we have thousands of followers, and they're able to watch our clips that we'll pull even from like this podcast. And so I thank everybody that has watched. An extra thank you if you watch the full thing and subscribe, but under no illusion that you have to do that. We will get this in front of you. Anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Well, just to you, how grateful I am for being given this opportunity to be a part of OMJ has been just an incredible experience for me. And I'm honestly delighted to get up every morning and come here. Well, the 2 days out of the week that I am here have, it's honestly, in a lot of ways, it's been life changing.
Awesome.
And
I love it.
And life affirming and reaffirming and any other, positive adjective you could attach to it. So it's nice, being fueled by your passion and really, forming those relationships, whether it's, within our sort of employee structure or with clients or engaging with people on social media. And of course, with this medium and this platform as well.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
And thank you.
And as we texted Miss Barnwell,
indeed, grade teacher,
our 4th grade teacher, we texted her a picture from the shop and said, "Thank you, Miss Barnwell."
We're cool. 30 years later, we're still at it.
We're still at it. So thank you guys. Subscribe, and we'll catch you here soon.
Thanks.
Yep.
So any inspiration from Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance?
My wife, Hannah, actually, I think she loved his jeans, is what she told me.
I'm pretty sure my wife, Jamie, has them in the back of her closet.
Yeah,
so.
I think from the memes I've seen, any millennials in their high school days own those jeans. So I think he inspired a generation.
We'll dust them off, ladies.
Yes.